Just over a year ago, I made a video on why Avatar: The Last Airbender is a masterpiece and why you should watch it. And look, you guys definitely lit me up in the comments over my Sokka mispronunciation from the Southern Water Tribe, Katara and Sokka. Look, I get my gang membership should be revoked, but look, this doesn't mean I love the series any less. The original series blends contrasts so well, like tragedy and innocence, and it can feel like you're eating a gourmet peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Korra shares plenty of ambiguity in its own right, yet the series gets nowhere near the same amount of love as The Last Airbender. While some of the reasons are justified, it doesn't mean the show is worse. In fact, I would say the opposite. Since you loved me raving about Avatar, I figured why not do one for Korra? But we're gonna do things a little differently here. I'm gonna debunk the major malfunctions people have with this cartoon and explain why it's not as bad as you think, and why you should still watch the beautiful mess that is The Legend of Korra. The number one reason most people despise Korra is her personality. She's so cocky. She's so rude. She's so stubborn. Look, I'm not disputing the validity of these statements because, look, I'm no poker champ, but even I know that a full house beats a three of a kind every single time. For the longest time, Korra never appreciated the spirit world, and most of that stems from a lack of care and overconfidence in her own ability. Her stubbornness combined with high emotions is a recipe for disaster, as we see in Season 2, where she dumps Tenzin as her mentor after a major argument. Add in her impulsiveness, which we see her quickly trust and anoint her uncle Unalaq as her new mentor, and things really start to fall apart. Sure, if she took a few minutes to think about things, she'd be better off, but don't forget, she is a teenager. Angst and rebelliousness is in the DNA, and remember how unbearably annoying Zuko was in the first couple of seasons? And he was on the wrong side of the equation, but neither character really is that horrible. Okay, so Korra lacks the amiable and lovable nature like Aang, but keep in mind that these two share common qualities that are far more important, like loyalty to their friends, an undying love for their animal companions, and the committed responsibility to protect the world. Don't forget, Aang's most irredeemable action in the original series was refusing to take on the Avatar role in the first place. It took him a century and then some to realize the responsibility, while Korra never would have thought about something like that, not even for a second. Korra's obvious flaws are just another version of how relatable and intriguing the characters of the Avatar universe are. We see in the beginning the gifted, tough waterbender with enough hubris to send a space shuttle to the sun, but over time we learn her fragile interior. This starts as early as episode 2 when she faces her first true challenge, airbending. She struggles mightily because her lack of spiritual connection is the most important part of learning airbending. Another critical moment was during her fight with Amon, where she briefly lost her bending abilities, and that shook her to the core. That feeling of weakness where something important to you is taken away is a natural reaction. Just look at Dak Prescott. But in all seriousness, having an injury is something most of us can relate to, and losing the ability to do something, even if temporary, can be traumatizing. That feeling of weakness haunts Korra initially, and she never fully recovers. In fact, things continue to get worse, like in her battle with Zahir in Season 3. Nearly dying understandably breaks her. I remember vividly that helplessness she felt in total defeat, and it's hard to watch. The aftermath of her near-death experience, she goes full Thomas Pynchon, avoiding contact with everyone she cares for. Her arc of self-discovery is not just for Korra, but for us too, because like I said, it was rough. We shouldn't single Korra out because she's not the only one with annoying character flaws in this cartoon. Tenzin is strict, super rigid, and very close-minded. Bolin is incompetent, easily influenced, and too selfish to the point where his actions are destructive to those he supposedly cares for. Mako is not only extremely intense, but equally as indecisive. to the point where he pretty much cheats on his girl. What's important to remember from all this is how all of them do grow for the better. And sure, the level of better varies, but this is really true for our main protagonist. Because over the series, she becomes humble and truly realizes the importance of friendship and, even more critical, the importance of balance in a world that's anything but. Korra is vastly different from Aang, but the more you appreciate her as a character instead of comparing her to Aang, the more complex and interesting you'll find her. People despise Korra's fragmented storyline, with each season being a standalone arc, and often ask why it's not cohesive and singular as The Last Airbender. Well, you can thank Nickelodeon because they ordered a 12-episode miniseries because they didn't believe young boys would tune into a female-led cartoon, which sounds crazy when you think about it, but this was 2012 after all. So The Last Airbender was a huge success. The same creators who may or may not have wanted to go with another story in the first place were behind it, so you knew you were getting a good product, and you still didn't trust them enough to actually give them whatever they needed. Oy vey. Anyways, after the unsurprising success of the first season, Nick ordered a second one, and it went through some pretty bad production problems, but they still performed well enough for Nickelodeon to order not one, but 2 extra seasons. Despite having 2 full seasons, Nick still didn't promote Korra at all, placed them in horrible time slots, and even aired the last 5 episodes of the entire series on their crappy Nick.com website. Now I'll throw the tiniest little bone for Nickelodeon because there were many successful cartoons like Steven Universe and Adventure Time that were using the shorter 10-minute format for an episode. It was pretty successful, so I'm sure Nickelodeon wanted to follow suit, but this is still ridiculous and disrespectful to a franchise that's done so well to you. The cable channel's decision to fragment the storylines actually fell into the creators' laps because they said themselves they wanted to shy away from an overarching plot. I get that some people may find this method of storytelling kind of disorienting, but I appreciate the change of pace, and the charm of an evolving plotline does really open it up for breakout characters, like the villains in this series, which are far more compelling than Fire Lord Ozai, which I will get into later in this video. We also explore the Avatar universe from different angles that otherwise might be harder, like the political strife of benders versus non-benders, governmental coups, and much more. At the end of the day, I appreciate how Korra tried to stay fresh thematically, because the temptation to reinvent the wheel is strong, and the media loves the quickest way from A to B when it comes to making money. People love dunking on Republic City, the major setting of the series, where more often than not, people complain about the steampunky, technologically advanced world and how it doesn't make sense, but I wholeheartedly disagree. The Last Airbender had some of the best world building you'll ever see on television, and as much as I love the Earth Kingdom's farmlands and the Water Tribe's beautiful beaches, Korra needed to go in a different direction. Now I know time skips can be hit or miss, but this one doesn't feel nonsensical. If you've seen The Last Airbender, then you already know Fire Nation was extremely advanced with warships and other vehicles. And basically what I'm trying to say is that the widespread use of electricity and radio and even cars feels like a natural enough progression for the time skip to make sense. Truth is, a lot can happen in 70 years. I mean, we went from gliders to landing on the moon in less than that. Then you have pro bending, the underground sport where teams of benders use their abilities to knock opposing teams out of the ring. Think sumo wrestling, but you really don't have to touch them. This uniquely fun competition adds a different element to the franchise, like the World Martial Arts Tournament is to Dragon Ball or Yu-Gi-Oh's Battle City Tournament. While pro bending doesn't play a particularly big role in this series, it's still an interesting little addition nonetheless. There are plenty of people who feel the story of Korra is weakened because of all the different villains, but This is one instance where Nickelodeon's piecemeal seasonal strategy worked in their favor. The bad guys in Korra are far more interesting than the Fire Lord. Ozai is simply a madman heck-bent on world domination. Nothing more, nothing less. The antagonists in Korra are complex, and let's start with my favorite, Amon, who in the first season led the Equalists in their radical goal to completely eliminate bending and create a fair society. I like Amon because of his unique ability to mystify and terrify people equally, and built quite a large following. Don't get me wrong, he is a tough villain in his own right, but his cult of personality is what truly made him a formidable opponent. I want to also talk about Zahir, arguably the best villain of the Avatar universe, and yes, that includes Azula in this statement. So sue me. The anarchists awakened a new power and used it to continue his original plan of government takeover, which he accomplished. Think Lex Luthor if he had even a sliver of Superman's power. That's Zahir in a nutshell, and his terrifying intellect and savviness nearly caused the end of the world. But his actions did give rise to another villain who was even more powerful. Once a loyal member of the security guard, Kuvira took it into her own hands to rebuild the Earth Kingdom after Zahir's deadly actions, and was quite successful. Her charisma built a strong army that took over Republic City and earned her unquestionable political power. It wasn't just charisma alone that made her so tough, however. Her imposing physical strength was also a very big contributor, and we saw that firsthand when she defeated Korra in single combat. For the sake of time and interest, I'm leaving out Unalaq, but it's still worth mentioning that he and the rest of the villains in this cartoon are all undeniably evil. However, what makes them so scary is their undying commitment to the cause. They all truly believe their way is the right way to help the greater good because on the surface, human equality, government reform seem like noble efforts, right? But the real problem is their methods were brutal. Like the MCU's Eric Killmonger or even Attack on Titan's Eren Yeager. The line of good and evil gets blurry. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the heck out of characters like them. The Last Airbender explored the negative effects of war and politics, and we see those similar themes in Korra, but we get something more here, progressivism. And it all starts with our female protagonist. She's a girl, darker skinned, and bisexual, which was a rarity in cartoons, even as recently as a decade ago. Characters like Korra helped usher in plenty of new and diverse main characters, like Amity from the Owl House and Pearl from Steven Universe, just to name a few. On the other side of the spectrum, Korra also shows that some male-female relationships can genuinely be platonic. For centuries, social movements have evolved our world where diversity is celebrated, not feared. That's such a beautiful thing. The creators themselves said that making a character like Korra was long overdue, and I have so much respect for them because they weren't afraid to create a cartoon that tackles these very important things. Representation is not just a numbers game. It's about finding people who genuinely and accurately show a culture and help people understand why it's okay to be different. The Avatar universe wouldn't be as amazing as it is without the Legend of Korra, and no matter what people say about this show, what it does for the underrepresented is far more important. So what have we learned here? Korra has its share of problems, yes, but is it really as bad as what people say it is? No, it's not. In fact, I actually really appreciate the things they tried to tackle in this series. And honestly, I think people just really need to understand and accept that Korra is just one giant, beautiful mess. And that's okay. So what's your favorite part of The Legend of Korra? Or maybe you're just not a fan of this series. Either way, I want to know all about it in the comments. And if you want to see more anime recommendations with a twist, I've got plenty more for you to check out. But while you're at it, why not subscribe by clicking that platypus, which you could find here, somewhere on the screen. And don't forget to have a great day, a great night, a great morning, wherever it is, wherever you are, and don't forget to stay nerdious. I get that some may find this. I get that some may find this. I get that some people may find the. What is wrong with me?